My name is Allie, and I just turned 33 last month. After 15 years of clawing my way up the corporate ladder, I finally bought my dream home. Growing up, I watched my parents pour every resource into my brother Jake's life while I scraped by on leftovers of time, money, and affection. I thought those days were behind me until my family called with shocking demands about my new house. Apparently, my success wasn't actually mine. It was built to benefit them first. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever dealt with entitled family members, hit that like button and subscribe to show you're in this with me. Are you ready to hear how I finally stood up for myself? I grew up in a modest brick house in suburban Detroit, Michigan. My parents, Martha and Richard, worked steady jobs that kept us firmly in the middle class. Dad was an account manager at a local manufacturing company, while Mom taught third grade at the neighborhood elementary school. Our family of four looked perfectly normal from the outside, but inside our home, the dynamics told a different story. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my brother Jake held a special place in our family. Being 3 years older than me should have made some difference in how we were treated, but the disparity went far beyond age-appropriate privileges. Jake got brand new clothes at the start of each school year. His wardrobe arrived in crisp shopping bags with tissue paper tags still attached. Meanwhile, I received boxes of hand-me-downs from cousins, or if I was lucky, a single new outfit for the first day of school. For Christmas one year, when Jake was 12 and I was 9, he received the expensive gaming console he'd been begging for, complete with 3 games and an extra controller. I got a set of colored pencils and a sketchbook. When I asked why Santa brought Jake more presents, my mother simply said, "Your brother needs more encouragement than you do. You're already so good at entertaining yourself." The pattern of favoritism became more pronounced as we entered our teenage years. When Jake earned a B+ on his math final in sophomore year, my parents took the entire family out to our town's nicest restaurant. Dad ordered champagne for himself, and Mom toasting to Jake's academic breakthrough. 2 months later, when my report card showed straight A's for the 3rd consecutive term, my mother glanced at it and said, "Good job, Allie," before asking if I'd finished the dishes. The disparity in our treatment became impossible to ignore during our respective high school graduations. Jake graduated with a solid B average, nothing spectacular, but enough to get into the state university. My parents gifted him a used but reliable car, saying he'd need it for college. They threw him an elaborate graduation party, inviting extended family and friends from across the state. 2 years later, I graduated as valedictorian of my class. I had earned a substantial scholarship to a prestigious university across the country. My graduation gift? A suitcase. My parents explained it was practical, since I'd be traveling far for school. My graduation party was a simple backyard barbecue with immediate family and a few neighbors. These experiences could have crushed my spirit, but instead, they fueled a fierce determination. If my family wouldn't recognize my worth, I would build a life where others did. I threw myself into academics, finding mentors in my teachers who saw potential my parents overlooked. My advanced placement English teacher, Ms. Winters, became particularly important to me. She was the first adult who seemed genuinely impressed by my abilities, often staying after school to discuss my essays or recommend books that challenged me. I also built a small but loyal group of friends who appreciated me for exactly who I was. Unlike at home, where I felt invisible, unless I was serving some purpose for Jake, my friends sought out my company and valued my opinions. During my senior year, while my classmates worried about college applications, I already had my acceptance letter and scholarship secured. I graduated as valedictorian, delivering a speech about perseverance and self-belief that earned a standing ovation. From the podium, I could see my parents in the audience. They were smiling, and for once they seemed truly proud. That pride, however, came with strings attached. As we drove home from the ceremony, my father said something that would stick with me for years. "With a brain like yours, Allie, you'll be making good money someday." It's comforting to know that if Jake ever hits a rough patch, You'll be able to help him out." I said nothing, but inside, something hardened. The scholarship that would send me across the country suddenly felt like an escape route. In August, I packed my new suitcase and prepared to leave for college. My mother hugged me at the airport, tears in her eyes. "We're going to miss you," she said, and I believed her. But as I boarded the plane, I couldn't shake the feeling that what they'd really miss was the support I provided to the family, especially to Jake. As I flew toward my new life, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. I was excited about the independence college would bring, eager to immerse myself in studies without having to consider Jake's needs first. But there was also a deep sadness, a mourning for the supportive family I'd never had. I promised myself that I would build my own success on my own terms. What I didn't realize then was that my family's expectations would follow me no matter how far I went. The university campus was everything I'd dreamed of during those nights I'd stayed up late researching colleges while my parents attended Jake's mediocre basketball games. Sprawling green quads, historic brick buildings with ivy climbing their walls, and libraries filled with more books than I could read in a lifetime. It felt like entering a different world, one where achievement was not just acknowledged, but celebrated. I declared my major in computer science after excelling in my introductory programming course. The field fascinated me, offering a perfect blend of logic and creativity. While many of my classmates struggled with the challenging material, I found myself thriving under the pressure. For the first time in my life, my intelligence and work ethic didn't make me an outsider. Here, they made me belong. During orientation week, I met Tara Johnson in the dorm lounge. She was arranging a small, succulent garden on her windowsill when I walked in. "They're practically impossible to kill," she explained, noticing my interest. "Perfect for college students who barely remember to feed themselves." Her easy laugh and practical outlook immediately put me at ease. We bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and midnight study sessions fueled by too much coffee. Unlike the conditional acceptance I'd grown accustomed to at home, Tara's friendship came without expectations. She never kept score of who paid for dinner last or who owed whom a favor. When I confided in her about my family dynamics, she didn't minimize my experiences or suggest I should be more understanding. Instead, she said, "Families are supposed to lift you up, not drain you dry." As my circle of friends expanded, I maintained minimal contact with my family back home. I called once a week, usually on Sunday evenings when I knew both parents would be available. These conversations followed a predictable pattern. After briefly inquiring about my classes, the discussion would inevitably turn to Jake. "Your brother's started another business venture," my mother announced during one such call midway through my sophomore year. "He's selling custom motorcycle parts online." "That's the third business this year," I noted, trying to keep the skepticism out of my voice. "He's entrepreneurial," my father chimed in defensively. "Not everyone can follow the traditional path like you, Allie." I bit back a response about how my traditional path had received zero encouragement from them. Instead, I asked, "How's he funding this one?" A telling pause followed. "We helped him with the initial inventory," my mother finally admitted. The next update came a few months later. Jake had married his girlfriend Sophia after a whirlwind 3-month romance. 6 months after that, they welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Emma. With each call, the updates about Jake's growing family were paired with subtle hints about my future responsibilities. "It's so expensive raising a child these days." My mother sighed after telling me about Emma's christening, which I hadn't been invited to attend. "Jake's business is still finding its footing, you know. It's a good thing you'll be graduating soon and starting a good job." The implication was clear. My future earnings were already being mentally allocated to support my brother's family. Rather than addressing this directly, I redirected the conversation to my internship at a promising tech startup in Seattle. The experience had been transformative, giving me practical skills that complemented my theoretical knowledge. More importantly, the company had already hinted at a full-time position after graduation. When I graduated with honors, my parents made the trip across the country for the ceremony. Their presence should have felt supportive, but their comments throughout the weekend made clear their priorities hadn't changed. "The starting salary they offered you is incredible," my father remarked after I shared details of my job offer. "Jake could really use some help with the mortgage now that Sophia's pregnant again." "Dad, I haven't even started working yet," I protested. "I'll have student loans to pay off, not to mention the cost of setting up an apartment in Seattle." "Family helps family," my mother interjected her tone, making it clear the discussion was closed. I returned home briefly after graduation before moving to Seattle. Those few weeks in my childhood home only reinforced my decision to put distance between myself and my family's expectations. Jake visited frequently, often with specific financial emergencies that my parents expected me to address. His car needed repairs. The baby needed specialized formula. His business was just one investment away from taking off. Each request came with the weight of familial obligation and subtle emotional manipulation. "We always knew you'd be the successful one," my mother would say, as if my academic and professional achievements had been their plan all along rather than accomplished despite their lack of support. The morning I left for Seattle, my father handed me an envelope. Inside was a list of Jake's monthly expenses with a suggested amount I should contribute highlighted in yellow. I tucked the envelope into my bag without comment and hugged my parents goodbye. On the plane, I tore the list into tiny pieces and left it in the sick bag. It was time to set boundaries, even if my family didn't understand them. Seattle welcomed me with its emerald landscapes and vibrant tech scene. The city felt alive with possibility, each day offering a fresh start, unburdened by family history. My apartment was small, but entirely my own. A studio with large windows overlooking a bustling street lined with coffee shops and bookstores. The early months weren't easy. My job demanded long hours and rapid learning. Some nights I stayed at the office until midnight debugging code or preparing presentations. But unlike the work I'd done at home to earn snippets of parental approval, this effort was building something tangible for my future. Making friends proved challenging initially. Most of my coworkers were older with established social circles and families. I joined a rock climbing gym hoping the shared struggle up artificial cliff faces might forge connections. It was there that I met Daniel, a graphic designer, who invited me to a game night with his friends. Slowly, I began building my chosen family. My biological family remained a complicated presence in my life, though now at a more manageable distance. I established a routine of monthly video calls, which allowed me to control the duration and direction of our interactions. Despite this boundary, family conversations inevitably circled back to Jake's growing needs. "Jake and Sophia are expecting their third child," my mother announced during one such call about 2 years after I'd moved to Seattle. "They're going to need a bigger house." The expectation hung unspoken in the digital space between us. I pretended not to notice and changed the subject to my recent promotion to lead developer on a significant project. By my 5th year in Seattle, my career had gained substantial momentum. I'd been promoted twice and had developed a reputation as an innovative problem solver. My work on a security protocol had caught the attention of industry leaders, resulting in speaking opportunities at tech conferences. When a senior leadership position opened up, my manager encouraged me to apply. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and equity in the company. Around this same time, I met Michael at a charity auction hosted by a mutual friend. He worked as an environmental lawyer, his passion for conservation evident in the way he spoke about his cases. On our third date, I cautiously shared some stories about my family dynamics, testing how he would respond. "That sounds really unfair," he said simply. There was no attempt to justify my parents' behavior or suggest I should be more understanding. His straightforward acknowledgement of the inequality I'd experienced felt revolutionary. As our relationship deepened, Michael became another source of perspective on my family situation. When I felt guilty about not sending money after yet another plea from my parents on Jake's behalf, Michael asked questions that helped me clarify my own boundaries. Would they do the same for you if the situations were reversed? Have they ever prioritized your needs over Jake's? The answers were always no. My visits home became increasingly strained. Jake now had 3 children, all under the age of 7. His financial situation remained perpetually unstable, a series of failed business ventures and impulse purchases keeping him constantly on the edge of crisis. Each time I visited, he made pointed comments about my fancy job and easy life, as if my success had somehow been handed to me while he faced unfair challenges. "Some of us have real responsibilities," he said during one particularly tense dinner, gesturing toward his wife and children. "We can't all jet around to tech conferences and live the single life." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that his responsibilities were choices he had made often impulsively and without proper planning. I also didn't mention that my jetting around involved exhausting work trips where I represented our company and networked until my face hurt from forced smiling. Phone calls with my parents increasingly focused on Jake's problems. My mother would begin our conversations with a perfunctory inquiry about my work, before launching into detailed updates about Jake's latest financial crisis or his children's accomplishments. Even positive news about my career was reframed in relation to how it could benefit Jake. When I received a significant performance bonus, I made the mistake of sharing my excitement with my parents. My father's immediate response was, "That's wonderful. Allie, Jake's minivan needs replacing, and this is perfect timing." I found myself sharing less and less about my financial situation with my family. Their expectation that my success existed primarily to solve Jake's problems had created a deep well of resentment that I struggled to address. How could I explain that their lifetime of favoring Jake had wounded me in ways I was still discovering? I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Levine, who specialized in family dynamics. Our sessions helped me understand that the patterns established in my childhood continued to affect my adult relationships. I found myself overcompensating at work, taking on extra projects to prove my worth. In my relationship with Michael, I initially struggled to accept his support, always waiting for the conditions that would surely be attached. "Your family taught you that love and support are conditional," Dr. Levine observed during one session. "They showed you that you were only valuable for what you could provide, not for who you are. That's a harmful message, and it's not true." Working through these realizations was painful, but necessary. Gradually, I began setting firmer boundaries with my family while allowing myself to truly trust the healthy relationships in my life. After 7 years in Seattle with a secure leadership position and a loving relationship with Michael, I decided it was time to buy a home. I had been saving diligently, living well below my means despite my comfortable salary. The real estate market was challenging, but after months of searching, I found the perfect place, a beautiful 4-bedroom craftsman in a charming neighborhood with a garden that captured the morning light and a kitchen where I could indulge my rediscovered love of cooking. The day I signed the final papers and received the keys, I felt a sense of achievement that went beyond the financial milestone. This house represented security that I had created for myself, a space that was entirely mine, chosen without compromise or consideration of anyone else's needs or preferences. For the first time in my life, I had created something substantial that existed solely for my own happiness. I didn't realize that my family would see it very differently. The day after I moved into my new home, I decided to share my excitement with my family through a video call. I had spent weeks selecting furniture painting rooms in calming shades of blue and green, and arranging my books and treasured possessions in ways that made the space feel uniquely mine. Pride bubbled up as I prepared to give them a virtual tour of what I had accomplished. My parents appeared on screen first, sitting close together on their familiar beige sofa. My father's hair had grayed considerably since I'd last visited, and my mother was wearing the reading glasses she'd long resisted needing. "Allie, we've been wondering when you'd call," my mother said by way of greeting. "Jake and Sophia are here too. I'll get them." Before I could explain that I'd planned a private tour for my parents first, my mother had carried the laptop into the kitchen, where Jake, Sophia, and their 3 children were apparently having lunch. The chaotic scene of spilled juice and half-eaten sandwiches formed a stark contrast to my peaceful new home. "Hey, sis," Jake said, barely glancing at the screen. "Mom says you bought some fancy house." "I did?" I replied, trying to maintain my enthusiasm despite his lackluster response. "I've been saving for years, and I finally found the perfect place. Do you want to see it?" What should have been a joyful sharing of my achievement quickly took an unexpected turn. As I showed them the spacious living room with its bay window and built-in bookshelves, my mother interrupted. "How many bedrooms did you say it has?" 4, I answered. "The master suite, my home office, a guest room, and a smaller room I'm setting up as a reading nook." Jake leaned closer to the screen. 4 bedrooms for 1 person. That seems excessive, doesn't it?" Before I could respond, my father chimed in. 4 bedrooms would be perfect for when Jake and his family visit. The kids could each have their own room. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't a casual observation, but an expectation. I continued the tour, showing them the updated kitchen with its marble countertops and the backyard with its mature maple tree. With each new feature I revealed, I could see calculations happening behind my family's eyes, as if they were mentally arranging their own belongings in my space. "The guest room has a queen bed," I explained as I showed them the tastefully decorated space with its coastal-themed artwork and plush area rug. "That won't work for Jake and Sophia," my mother said, frowning. "They need a king. You should replace that before they visit." I blinked in surprise. "I just bought the queen mattress. It's brand new." "Well, Jake has back problems," my mother explained, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. "He needs a king bed, don't you, Jake?" My brother nodded solemnly. "Ever since my football injury in high school." I couldn't recall any significant football injury, but I let it pass. "Well, it's just a guest room. I don't expect to have visitors that often." A heavy silence followed this statement. My father cleared his throat. "Allie, we assumed that now that you have space, Jake's family would spend summers with you. Seattle is so nice in the summer, and the kids have never seen the Pacific Ocean." "Summers?" I repeated, struggling to keep my voice level. "Dad, I work full-time. I can't entertain house guests for entire seasons." "You wouldn't need to entertain them," my mother said, as if this resolved the issue. "They'd be family, not guests." I tried to redirect the conversation, moving my laptop to show them the master bathroom with its luxurious soaking tub, a feature I'd specifically requested during the remodeling. Sophia appeared suddenly at Jake's shoulder, her eyes sharp with interest. "Is that bathroom attached to the master bedroom?" she asked. When I confirmed it was, she nodded approvingly. "That would be perfect for us when we visit. The kids could use the hall bathroom." "Actually," I said carefully, "the master bedroom is my room. Guests would stay in the guest room." Sophia laughed as if I'd made a joke. "But you're just 1 person. You don't need all that space. Jake and I would need the master since there are 2 of us." I felt a flash of anger, but managed to keep my tone neutral. "I bought this house for myself, Sophia. The master bedroom is mine." "Don't be selfish, Allie," my mother admonished. "Family shares." The conversation continued to deteriorate as my parents and Jake's family discussed my home, as if it were a communal property rather than my personal investment. At one point, Sophia mentioned redecorating their room to better suit their taste, while my mother suggested converting my planned reading room into a playroom for the children. "We could leave some toys there permanently," she explained, "so the kids feel at home during their visits." "How often are you expecting these visits to happen?" I asked, a growing sense of dread building inside me. My father glanced at Jake before answering. Well, we were thinking they could come for all school breaks, spring break, winter holiday, the entire summer vacation, and of course, long weekends whenever possible. I struggled to maintain my composure. That's more than 3 months of the year. I didn't buy this house to serve as a vacation home for Jake's family. Family supports family, Allie. My mother said, her voice taking on the sanctimonious tone I'd heard throughout my childhood whenever I questioned the disparity in how Jake and I were treated. Your brother has 3 children to provide for. It's not like you have those responsibilities. Jake chose that moment to drop what felt like a calculated bombshell. Actually, we might need more than visits. My latest business venture isn't going as planned. If things don't turn around in the next few months, we might need a more permanent solution. What do you mean? I asked, though I already knew. We might need to move in with you for a while, Jake said casually, as if he were suggesting borrowing a cup of sugar. Just until we get back on our feet. Your house has plenty of space, my father added supportively, and Seattle has better job opportunities than here. I felt as though I'd been ambushed. I didn't buy a house for Jake's family, I said, my voice finally betraying my frustration. This is my home. Don't be dramatic, Allie, my mother sighed. We've always known your success would benefit the whole family. That was the plan all along. Whose plan? I demanded, because it certainly wasn't mine. We invested in your education, my father began. You didn't pay a penny for my college, I interrupted, unable to contain myself any longer. I earned a scholarship and took out student loans for the rest, loans that I paid off myself. An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by Jake's oldest child asking loudly when they would be visiting Aunt Allie's big house. The question snapped something inside me. I need to go, I said abruptly. I have an appointment. Without waiting for their responses, I ended the call. My hands were shaking as I set my laptop down. The beautiful home that had brought me so much joy just hours earlier now felt tainted by my family's expectations. I sank onto my new sofa and did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I cried. When the tears finally subsided, I called Tara. Despite living on opposite coasts, we had maintained our friendship through regular calls and annual visits. She listened without interruption as I recounted the disastrous family call. They've always seen you as Jake's backup plan, she said when I finished. But Allie, their expectations aren't your obligations. You built this life for yourself, not for them. I know, I whispered, looking around at the home I had created. But knowing doesn't make it any easier to stand up to them. Maybe it's time they learned that your success isn't their safety net, Tara suggested gently. That night, as I lay in my king-sized bed in my master suite, I made a decision. The next time my family pushed these boundaries, I would push back. I couldn't change their expectations overnight, but I could finally start standing up for myself. What I didn't realize was how soon that resolve would be tested. 2 weeks after the video call, my phone rang with my mother's ringtone. I briefly considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided it was better to address the situation directly. Allie, dear, my mother began without preamble. We've been talking, and we think it would be nice if we all came to see your new house in person. Jake has some vacation days saved up. The timing seemed suspicious, especially given Jake's revelation about his failing business. When were you thinking of visiting? I asked cautiously. Next weekend, she replied. We've already looked at flights. They're quite reasonable if we book today. Next weekend was just 10 days away, hardly enough notice for hosting 5 additional people, including 3 children, but refusing would only delay the inevitable confrontation. I can accommodate you for the weekend, I said firmly. Friday through Sunday. Oh, we were thinking more like Thursday through Tuesday, my mother countered, to make the airfare worthwhile. Mom, I have work commitments. A weekend is all I can manage right now. After some back and forth, she reluctantly agreed to the shortened time frame, though her tone made it clear she found my boundaries unreasonable. I spent the next week preparing for their visit, stocking the refrigerator and making up beds in the guest rooms. I even purchased a small collection of toys and books for my nieces and nephew, hoping to make them comfortable without encouraging permanent residence. When they arrived, the first sign of trouble was the excessive luggage. For a 3-day visit, they had brought 6 large suitcases and numerous carry-ons. Jake struggled to fit everything into my car at the airport pickup. "Did you pack your entire house?" I asked, attempting humor to mask my concern. "Kids need a lot of stuff," Sophia replied defensively. "And we wanted to be prepared for all weather conditions." The drive from the airport to my home was filled with the children's excited chatter and my parents' comments about the expensive-looking neighborhoods we passed through. When we finally pulled into my driveway, I felt a surge of pride despite my apprehension. My home looked particularly charming that day, with late-afternoon sunlight warming its craftsman details and flower baskets hanging on the front porch. "It's bigger than it looked on video," my father commented approvingly as we unloaded the car. Once inside, I began the in-person tour, showing them the details that hadn't translated well over video. The children immediately ran through the rooms, their energy filling the quiet spaces I'd grown accustomed to. "Which room is ours?" Jake asked, dragging 2 suitcases into the entryway. "I've set up the guest room for you and Sophia," I explained, leading them upstairs. "And the reading room has an air mattress for the kids." Jake frowned as he peered into the guest room with its queen bed and modest dimensions. Without asking, he continued down the hall and pushed open the door to my master bedroom. "This room is much bigger," he observed. "It would be better for Sophia and me, plus Emma could sleep on the window seat." "That's my bedroom," I said firmly. "Don't be difficult, Allie," my mother interjected, appearing behind us in the hallway. "Your brother and his wife need more space than you do. You can sleep in the guest room for a few days." "No," I said, the single word hanging in the air between us. "I've prepared the guest room for them. That's where they'll stay." My father joined the growing crowd in the hallway. "Allie, be reasonable. Jake and Sophia are used to a king bed. The guest room bed is too small for them." "Then they can book a hotel," I suggested, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. "There are several nice ones nearby." The shocked silence that followed made it clear how unprecedented this stance was. Throughout our lives, I had been the one expected to accommodate, to adjust, to make do with less. My refusal to continue this pattern clearly caught them off guard. "We're not paying for a hotel when there's a perfectly good master bedroom right here," Jake finally said, his tone indignant. "You're right, there is a perfectly good master bedroom here," I agreed. "And it's mine." The tension was temporarily broken by a crash from downstairs, followed by the wail of a child. We all hurried down to find Jake's middle child standing amid the shattered remains of a hand-blown glass sculpture I'd purchased from a local artist. It had been prominently displayed on a side table in the living room, a swirl of blues and greens that had reminded me of the Pacific Ocean. "Timothy," Sophia scolded half-heartedly, "we don't touch things in other people's houses." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that accidents happen. "It's okay. Let me get a broom before someone gets cut." As I cleaned up the broken glass, my mother patted my shoulder. "It's just a thing, Allie. Family is more important than possessions." "That sculpture cost $800, I said quietly. "It was made by an artist whose work I've admired for years." $800 for a glass decoration?" Jake scoffed. "Must be nice to have money to waste like that." I bit back a retort about his series of failed business ventures that had surely wasted far more than the cost of my sculpture. Instead, I finished cleaning up and suggested we all get settled before dinner. During the meal I'd prepared, conversation remained strained. My parents made a point of praising every aspect of the house, but their compliments were invariably followed by suggestions about how the space could better accommodate Jake's family. "The backyard would be perfect for a swing set," my father observed. For when the kids visit. The basement could be converted into a family room, my mother added, with a pull-out sofa for when you have a larger group staying. I nodded non-committally and changed the subject to my recent promotion at work. This proved to be another misstep. Speaking of your job, Jake began setting down his fork. I need to talk to you about something important. The serious tone immediately put me on alert. What about... My business is going through a rough patch, he said, confirming what he'd hinted at during our video call. The economy, people aren't spending like they used to. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. The thing is, he continued, I have a great opportunity to turn things around. There's a distributor willing to partner with me, but I need capital to secure the deal. I could see where this was heading and braced myself. How much are you talking about? I asked. 50,000? Jake replied, as if requesting pocket change. With that investment, I could double or even triple the business within a year. The sum was substantial, representing a significant portion of my carefully maintained emergency fund. That's a lot of money, Jake. It's nothing to you, he countered. Not with your salary and bonuses. My father leaned forward. We've already put everything we can into helping Jake. We've even had to dip into our retirement savings. This was new information, and it alarmed me. You've been using your retirement funds. Family helps family, my mother said, as if this explained and justified everything. I can't just give you $50,000, I said, trying to keep emotion out of my voice. That would be financially irresponsible. It's not giving, Jake argued. It's investing. You'd get returns once the business takes off. Given his track record, I had serious doubts about any returns materializing. I'd need to see a business plan, financial projections, information about this distributor. You don't trust me, Jake interrupted, his face flushing with anger. After everything I've done for you. The statement was so absurd that I actually laughed, a short, incredulous sound that escaped before I could stop it. Everything you've done for me? What exactly would that be, Jake? Don't take that tone with your brother, my mother warned. I'm genuinely curious, I pressed. What has Jake ever done for me that would justify a $50,000 investment with no documentation? We're family, my father stated, as if this single fact trumped all financial common sense. And family supports each other. It seems like support in this family only flows in one direction, I observed. Toward Jake. That's not fair, Allie, my mother protested. We've always supported you too. How? By coming to my college graduation after I paid my own way, by calling me selfish when I wouldn't give Jake my bedroom tonight? You've always been so independent, my father said, as if this were a criticism rather than a trait born of necessity. Jake needs more help. And whose fault is that? I asked. Jake is 36 years old. He has 3 children. At what point is he responsible for his own financial stability? Not everyone can have an easy career path like yours, Jake snapped. Easy, I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You think my career has been easy? I worked through college, took extra courses to graduate early, and have put in 70-hour weeks for years to get where I am. Nothing about that was easy. You've always been selfish, Jake accused. Only thinking about your own success while I'm trying to support a family. I've built the life I have through hard work and careful planning, I countered. Your financial problems aren't the result of bad luck, Jake. They're the consequence of your choices. Allie, my mother gasped. Apologize to your brother immediately. It was as if I were 10 years old again, being scolded for not letting Jake win at a board game. Something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly. I won't apologize for speaking the truth, and I won't give Jake $50,000 to pour into another doomed business venture. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My father broke it with what he clearly thought was a compromise. If you're not comfortable with a direct investment, maybe we can find another solution. Such as, I asked warily. Jake and his family could move in with you, he suggested. Just until his business recovers. You'd save them rent and living expenses, which would be almost as good as a cash investment. Absolutely not, I said without hesitation. That is not happening. Why do you have 4 bedrooms if you won't share them with family who needs help? My mother demanded. Because it's my house, I replied simply. I bought it for myself with my money to live the life I want. You've changed, Allie, my father said sadly. Success has made you hard. No, Dad. I've just finally learned that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. Jake pushed his plate away dramatically. I always knew you'd abandon us once you made it big. You think you're so much better than us now. I don't think I'm better than you, I clarified. I just think I'm entitled to the fruits of my own labor without having to constantly rescue you from your financial mistakes. You wouldn't even have your precious career if it weren't for me, Jake retorted. What are you talking about? I asked, genuinely confused. Mom and Dad focused on me so you could concentrate on school, he explained, as if this narrative had been long established. They knew you were smart, but that I needed more support. They invested in me so you could develop your talents on your own. You owe your success to our family's strategy. I stared at him in disbelief, then looked at my parents expecting them to correct this bizarre rewriting of our family history. Instead, they were nodding in agreement. We always knew you'd be fine on your own, Allie, my mother confirmed. You were so self-sufficient even as a child. I became self-sufficient because I had to, I corrected her. Not because it was some grand family strategy to foster my independence. You see, Jake said triumphantly, it worked, and now you're in a position to give back to the family that made your success possible. The audacity of this claim left me momentarily speechless. They had truly convinced themselves that neglecting me in favor of Jake had somehow been for my benefit. The realization was both infuriating and oddly liberating. I think, I said slowly, we should all get some rest. It's been a long day. But the conversation was far from over. This confrontation had been brewing for decades, and now that it had begun, there would be no peaceful resolution without honest reckoning. The next morning, I woke early and sat on my back porch with a cup of coffee, gathering my thoughts. The previous night's dinner conversation had exposed the fundamental disconnect between how I viewed my life journey and how my family interpreted it. Their revisionist history had caught me off guard, but a night's reflection had clarified what I needed to say. Inside the house, I heard movement as my family began to stir. I took a deep breath and went inside to start breakfast, a peace offering of sorts before the difficult conversations that would surely follow. My mother was the first to appear, still in her robe and slippers. You're up early, she observed, accepting the coffee I offered. Couldn't sleep. I had a lot on my mind, I admitted. We need to talk about last night. Yes, I think Jake was hurt by your refusal to help. She began, immediately focusing on my brother's feelings. Mom, I interrupted gently but firmly. Before everyone comes down, I want to be clear about something. I love you and Dad, and I even love Jake, despite our complicated relationship. But the narrative that you focused on Jake for my benefit is not just inaccurate, it's hurtful. My mother's expression shifted between defensiveness and confusion. Allie, you've always been so capable. We never worried about you the way we worried about Jake. That's exactly the problem, I said. I needed parents who worried about me too, who celebrated my achievements the way they celebrated Jake's mediocrity, who invested in my potential the way they invested in Jake's businesses. My father appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day. What's going on? Allie is upset about our parenting. My mother explained, her tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. Not upset, I clarified. Just finally honest. Dad, do you remember when I graduated as valedictorian? Of course, he replied. We were very proud. You gave me a suitcase, I continued. 2 years earlier, you gave Jake a car for graduating with B's. Can you understand how that disparity might have affected me? My father shifted uncomfortably. Jake needed more encouragement. You were always motivated without external rewards. I was motivated because I learned early that my worth in this family was tied to what I could achieve, I explained. I wasn't naturally self-sufficient. I became self-sufficient because I had to be. Jake entered the kitchen, followed by a sleepy-looking Sophia. Are we talking about Allie's issues again? He asked with a smirk. We're talking about our family dynamics, I corrected him. And yes, that includes how differently we were treated growing up. Here we go, Jake sighed dramatically. Poor Allie, so successful and rich, complaining about her terrible childhood. I'm not saying my childhood was terrible, I clarified. I'm saying it was unequal in ways that were harmful. Life isn't equal, my father stated. We did what we thought was best for both of you. Let me ask you something, I said, setting down my coffee cup. If the situations were reversed, if Jake were the successful one and I were struggling financially, would you expect him to give me $50,000 without question? Would you expect him to let my family move into his house indefinitely? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. That's what I thought, I continued. The expectations have always been different. Jake gets endless chances and support, while I'm expected to be endlessly giving without complaint. You sound bitter, my mother observed. Not bitter, I corrected her. Clear-eyed. For years I accepted the family narrative that Jake needed more support, that my role was to achieve independently and then help carry Jake. But that's not a healthy dynamic, and I won't participate in it anymore. So you're just abandoning your family? Jake demanded. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Jake? I asked calmly. Name one significant sacrifice you've made for my benefit. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly struggling to identify an example. I'm not abandoning anyone, I continued. I'm setting boundaries. I'm willing to have a relationship with all of you, but not one based on financial exploitation. Exploitation, my father exclaimed. That's a terrible word to use about family. What would you call it when you expect me to give Jake $50,000 with no repayment plan, or to let his entire family move into my home indefinitely? If that's not exploitation, what is it? The children chose that moment to burst into the kitchen, temporarily halting our conversation. I busied myself preparing pancakes and fruit for breakfast, grateful for the interruption. The tension between the adults was palpable, but we maintained a facade of normalcy for the children's benefit. After breakfast, I suggested that my parents take the kids to the nearby park, while Jake, Sophia, and I continued our discussion. Once they had left, I addressed my brother and his wife directly. I want to be clear, I began. I value family, but that doesn't mean I'm obligated to fund your lifestyle or house your family whenever you have financial difficulties. Easy for you to say from your position of privilege, Sophia retorted. Not everyone has your advantages. What advantages are those? I asked. The advantage of working my way through college, of taking out student loans that I repaid myself, of working overtime for years to advance my career. You don't have children? She countered, as if this invalidated my perspective entirely. You don't understand the sacrifices parents make. Having children was your choice, I pointed out. A choice you made knowing your financial situation. Jake slammed his hand on the table. So, we don't deserve help because we decided to have a family, is that what you're saying? I'm saying that your choices have consequences, I replied, keeping my voice level despite his outburst. And those consequences aren't my responsibility to fix. Family helps family, Sophia insisted, echoing my parents' mantra. When someone is successful, they should share that success. I agree that families should support each other, I acknowledged. But support should flow in all directions, not just from me to Jake. And it shouldn't come with the expectation that I'll repeatedly sacrifice my financial security to solve problems created by Jake's poor decisions. "What do you want from us?" Jake asked bitterly. "An apology for needing help. I want acknowledgement that my success is my own, not something that belongs to the family. I want respect for my boundaries. And yes, I want some recognition that the way we were raised created unhealthy dynamics that continue to affect us as adults." "So this is all Mom and Dad's fault," Jake scoffed. "It's not about fault," I clarified. "It's about understanding how we got here and changing patterns that aren't working." The conversation continued in circles with Jake and Sophia alternating between denial anger and attempts at guilt manipulation. When my parents returned with the children, the atmosphere remained tense. "Have you resolved your differences?" my mother asked hopefully. "No," I admitted, "but I've clarified my position. I won't be giving Jake money for his business, and I won't be hosting his family for extended stays or permanent residence." "Then why did you buy such a big house?" my father demanded. "It makes no sense for just one person." "I bought it for me," I said simply, "because I wanted it and I could afford it. My home is not a family resource to be allocated according to need." "I never thought you'd be so selfish," my mother said, her disappointment evident. "We raised you better than this." "You raised me to believe my value came from what I could provide to others," I corrected her. "Especially to Jake. I've spent years in therapy unlearning that lesson." The word therapy caused both my parents to flinch as if I'd revealed something shameful. "You're seeing a therapist?" my father asked. "About us?" "About many things," I replied, "including family dynamics that left me feeling like I was only valued for my achievements and what they could contribute to the family, particularly to Jake's benefit." "That's ridiculous," my mother dismissed. "We've always been proud of you." "Pride isn't the same as support," I pointed out. "You were proud of my achievements but didn't support me in the way you supported Jake." "If you feel that way, maybe we should leave," my father suggested stiffly. "If that's what you want to do, I understand," I said. "But I hope instead we can start building a healthier relationship based on mutual respect." "Respect works both ways," my father countered. "And right now, you're not showing much respect for your family's needs." "I respect that Jake and Sophia have financial challenges," I acknowledged. "But respecting their situation doesn't make it my responsibility to solve." The conversation deteriorated from there with my parents defending their parenting decisions and Jake growing increasingly hostile about my refusal to help family. When Sophia suggested that perhaps I didn't really care about my nieces and nephew, I finally reached my breaking point. "I think it would be best if you all made arrangements to leave," I said quietly. "This visit isn't productive for any of us." "You're kicking us out?" Jake asked incredulously. "I'm suggesting we end this visit early before more hurtful things are said," I clarified. "I can help you book flights home for tomorrow." "Don't bother," my father said, rising from his seat. "We'll handle it ourselves." The next few hours were painfully awkward as my family packed their belongings, the children confused by the sudden change in plans. My mother's silence as she folded clothes was more accusatory than any words could have been. Jake made a point of loudly listing all the ways I had failed as a sister while packing in the guest room. As they prepared to leave for their hastily booked hotel rooms, my mother paused at the door. "I never thought I'd see the day when you chose money over family," she said sadly. "That's not what's happening," I replied. "I'm choosing healthy boundaries over exploitation." Jake's parting shot was equally cutting. Don't expect to see your nieces and nephews again, he warned. I won't expose them to someone so selfish. After they had gone, I walked through my quiet house, emotions swirling. Parts of the conversation replayed in my mind, doubts creeping in. Had I been too harsh? Was I truly the selfish person they accused me of being? I picked up my phone and called Michael, who had been supportive from a distance during the visit. They're gone, I told him, my voice trembling slightly. I think I just lost my family. You didn't lose them, he assured me. You just started being honest with them. What happens next is their choice. As I hung up, I realized he was right. For the first time in my life, I had been completely honest about the family dynamics that had shaped me. What happened next would depend on whether my family could accept that honesty and work toward change. I sat on my back porch as the sun set, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to deep purple. My house felt empty but peaceful, no longer buzzing with the tension of unmet expectations and long-held resentments. Whatever came next, I had finally spoken my truth. And that, I realized, was its own kind of freedom. In the weeks following my family's abrupt departure, silence descended like a heavy curtain between us. No calls, no texts, not even the usual family updates that my mother had faithfully sent every Sunday evening. The absence of communication was both painful and relieving a complex emotional state that Dr. Levine helped me navigate during our weekly sessions. Family estrangement is rarely clean or simple, she explained during a particularly difficult session. You're grieving the relationships you had while simultaneously mourning the healthy relationships you never got to experience. The guilt my family had instilled in me surfaced regularly, whispering that I had been selfish, that family obligation should trump personal boundaries. In my darkest moments, I wondered if I had overreacted, if I should have continued the pattern of sacrifice to maintain peace. What you're feeling is the result of lifelong conditioning, Dr. Levine assured me. Your family taught you that your needs mattered less than Jake's. Breaking that pattern feels wrong because it contradicts everything you were raised to believe about your role in the family. Michael became my anchor during this period, providing the unconditional support I had never experienced from my biological family. He listened without judgment when I needed to process my confusion, and distracted me with hikes, concerts, and cooking experiments when rumination threatened to overwhelm me. My chosen family stepped up as well. Tara flew out for a long weekend, helping me reclaim my guest room by repainting it in colors I loved, rather than the neutral tones I'd selected with potential visitors in mind. My colleagues and friends in Seattle created a buffer of normalcy and connection, reminding me that I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. About 6 weeks after the confrontation, an email arrived from my mother. The subject line read simply, "Thinking of you." The message inside was brief, but significant. Allie, your father and I have been reflecting on our visit and some of the things you said. While we don't agree with everything, we recognize that your perception of your childhood is different from what we intended. We miss you and would like to understand better. Love, Mom. It wasn't an apology, but it was an opening. After consulting with Dr. Levine, I responded with equal brevity, suggesting that if they were serious about understanding my perspective, perhaps we could arrange a session with a family therapist. To my surprise, they agreed. 2 weeks later, we sat in the virtual office of Dr. Mercer, a family therapist who specialized in adult parent-child relationships. The initial session was uncomfortable, with my parents defensive and me guarded, but it established a foundation for communication that had been missing for decades. Allie feels that her achievements were expected rather than celebrated, Dr. Mercer summarized during our third session, and that resources and emotional support were unequally distributed between her and Jake. We never meant for her to feel that way, my mother insisted, tears in her eyes. We just thought she didn't need as much as Jake did. He always struggled where things came easily to Allie. Things didn't come easily to me, I corrected gently. I worked incredibly hard. The difference was that I didn't receive recognition or support for that work the way Jake received support even when he didn't try. My father, who had been quiet for much of the session, finally spoke. I think, he said slowly, we may have taken you for granted, Allie. We assumed you would succeed no matter what, so we focused our attention on Jake. That wasn't fair to you. His acknowledgement, though small, felt monumental. For the first time, one of my parents had recognized the inequality that had shaped my childhood. It wasn't a complete understanding or apology, but it was a start. Jake and Sophia initially refused to participate in the therapy sessions, maintaining that I was the one who needed to apologize to them. However, as my parents began to recognize certain patterns, they encouraged Jake to join the conversation. His first session was combative, filled with accusations about my abandonment of the family. But even in his anger, cracks in his narrative began to show. You always got the praise for your grades and achievements, he complained. Mom and Dad were always talking about how smart you were, how you were going places. They may have praised me, I acknowledged, but they supported you. There's a difference between words and actions, Jake. They gave you the car, the business investments, the emotional support when things went wrong. As the sessions continued over several months, small shifts began to occur. My parents acknowledged that their approach to parenting had created an unhealthy dynamic between Jake and me. Jake reluctantly admitted that he had grown accustomed to being bailed out of difficult situations, rather than facing the consequences of his choices. I guess I did expect that Allie would help me because that was the pattern, he admitted during a breakthrough session. Everyone always said she was the successful one, so I thought that meant she was supposed to help the rest of us. Progress wasn't linear. There were sessions filled with defensiveness and old accusations, moments when it seemed we were moving backward rather than forward. But slowly, incrementally, understanding began to replace resentment. 9 months after the confrontation in my kitchen, my parents visited me in Seattle again, this time staying in a hotel of their own choosing. The visit was tentative but pleasant, with clear boundaries that they mostly respected. When they asked about my work or my house, their questions seemed genuinely interested, rather than calculating what benefit they might derive. Jake's journey was more complicated. His business ultimately failed, forcing him to find conventional employment for the first time in years. Initially, he blamed me for not providing the investment that would have saved the company. But as months passed with a steady paycheck and the structure of regular employment, he began to find a stability that had eluded him through years of entrepreneurial ventures. A year after our confrontation, I invited my family to a dinner at my home. The invitation was specific about arrival and departure times, and I made it clear that this was a meal, not an extended stay. To my surprise and relief, everyone respected these boundaries. During dinner, Jake mentioned that he had recently received a promotion at work. It's the first time I've actually stuck with something long enough to be good at it, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Turns out, I'm not bad at sales when I apply myself. That's great, Jake, I said sincerely. I'm proud of you. The simple exchange represented enormous growth for both of us. Jake was taking responsibility for his own success rather than expecting rescue, and I was able to offer genuine support without fear that it would be exploited. My relationship with my nieces and nephews gradually recovered as well. Instead of the extended visits my parents had once envisioned, we established a tradition of Aunt Allie Camp for 1 week each summer. During this structured time, I took the children on adventures around Seattle, building relationships based on genuine connection rather than obligation. The journey toward healthier family dynamics continues with occasional setbacks and old patterns threatening to resurface. My parents sometimes slip into their habit of expecting more from me than from Jake, and Jake occasionally tests boundaries with financial emergencies. But now we have tools to address these patterns when they emerge and a shared language to discuss the underlying issues. What I've learned through this process is that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, as I had been raised to believe. It was necessary not just for my own well-being, but for the health of our family as a whole. By refusing to continue patterns that enabled dependency and entitlement, I forced all of us to examine the dynamics that had shaped our relationships. My success is still my own, built through hard work and determination. But now, it's not viewed as a family resource to be allocated according to need. Instead, it's recognized as the result of my choices and efforts, just as my family members' situations reflect their choices. The house that once became a battleground over family expectations is now truly my home. When family visits, they come as respectful guests, not entitled owners. The boundaries I established, though painful at the time, ultimately created space for healthier relationships to grow. As I reflect on this journey from enablement to empowerment, I realize that the most valuable thing I've gained isn't just financial independence or professional success. It's the knowledge that my worth isn't tied to what I can provide to others. I matter for who I am, not what I can give. And that realization, hard-won through confrontation and healing, is perhaps the greatest success of all. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who felt entitled to your success? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more experiences from people who've learned to set healthy boundaries. And if you know someone struggling with similar family dynamics, share this video with them. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth, whatever that looks like in your life.